talking about the United States, he said, they say, during the last 30 years or so, the economic surplus controlled by corporations and in the hands of institutional investors has poured in an ever-increasing flow into an exotic array of financial instruments. Little of the vast economic surface was used to expand investment, which remained in a state of simple reproduction geared to mere replacement. With corporations unable to find the demand for their output and therefore confronted with a dearth of profitable investment opportunities, the process of net capital formations became more and more problematic. Hence, profits were increasingly directed away from investment in the expansion of productive capacity and towards financial speculation. And now we see what resulted, because what resulted was huge financial bubbles and of course huge property bubble, and the two linked, and like when very large bubbles link together, they almost always do the same thing, which is pop, and that's what we're experiencing. And well, one of the how do we fix the mess, and one seeing a sort of bastard Keynesianism has been adopted everywhere, with sort of genuflection towards the ideas that Keynes talked about on every hand, and only occasionally some lunatic can be heard or can be read in the Economist or Newsweek, sort of saying, "Oh, the problem is the problem is that there's too much. We should have less regulation. That would do the trick." And of course, one of the things that happens was that one of the things that Keynes described was the danger of what he called a liquidity trap, a situation in which, despite reducing interest rates close to zero, which of course has happened, deflationary pressures make it impossible for central banks to stimulate demand, and so they have to start putting money into the economy by so-called quantitative easing, usually by buying long-dated treasury bonds, and that's what the Fed and the Bank of England are currently being forced to do. And the thing is that when you ask anybody about what effect this is happening, the answer is always, well, it's a bit too soon to tell. We're very optimistic about this, but we won't be able to tell for a bit. So the other way to stimulate the economy, the other way to get it moving again, which Keynes argued for, was by sustained direct investment in capital works and socially desirable programs. Although, of course, what he suggested in 1936 was that the federal government could actually employ gangs of unemployed workers to dig holes in the ground and employ other unemployed workers to bury money in those holes. But the thing is that FDR's New Deal attempted to be more positive than that, and that's very held up now as the model, not only in the New Green Deal, but in a sort of notional way by practically every politician. There are now more green deals. We've got a forest of green deals now from New Green Deals all over the place. And the only problem about it is that of course FDR's New Deal didn't end the Depression. It took the Second World War to end the Great Depression. But last year, in July last year, the New Economics Foundation published the Green New Deal, which by a number of people, including the Green Party's Caroline Lucas, and which what they recognised was the tripartite nature of the crisis, and they called for a whole series of basically twin strategies. First, structural transformation of the regulation of national and international financial systems, and secondly, as they say, a sustained program to invest in and deploy energy conservation and renewable energies coupled with effective demand management. And there's a whole string of specific proposals that they make. Many of them are extremely sound, and they're listed in this pamphlet. And so that they're absolutely right. It is an extremely important contribution. And in their recognition of the scale and urgency of the crisis, they're a good deal more far-sighted than rather short the myopic norm amongst most economists. And their advocacy of a sort of fairly full-blooded Keynesian approach has produced a much more radical package of proposals than anything currently on the desk of Gordon Brown or indeed any central banker. However, the only problem is that, that in a sense they're prisoners of time, that the proposals have got a very narrow, perfectly understandable, but narrow focus on the immediate desire for economic stability, and a big reduction, the necessary big reduction in carbon emissions. And this, in my view, results in two fatal flaws in the analysis. First of all, the pamphlet's authors really don't seem to recognise the fundamentally and irredeemably anarchic nature of the economic system. The fact that it's the speculative drive that it is at the heart of the financial system that's been the prime mover of the credit crunch, rather than just a cabal of lords of the universe who've been a bit reckless. So that need for speculation is at the heart. So there's absolutely no point in the state taking over all or part of the equity and, unfortunately, the toxic debt of the banks, as has happened in this country, and fine-tuning regulatory systems simply in order to ride out this crisis. And I have to say, I do hope that they manage to do that actually happens, because we don't want what the alternative would be, a complete collapse of the monetary system. But the fact is that if we simply ride out and try to fine-tune, we're simply going to ride on into the next crisis, and the next crisis will be more savage than this one. Secondly, and I think in many ways more importantly, the New Green Deal pamphlet, and this is something that both Ann Pettifer and Caroline Lucas have actually recognised since, that the original pamphlet, the original position taken in New Green Deal, Green New Deal, you just can't get it right, can you? Is the issue of inequality. The inequality is the mainspring that drives, all the social ills that we see, and that is getting worse all the time.